Predictability and wrestling share a somewhat fractious relationship. Fans will moan, generally with some justification, when they can spot a result from a mile away, even if it makes perfect storyline sense. But conversely, attempts to deviate from tested formulae are widely condemned. Why didn't Shayna Baszler beat Becky Lynch? She was going off to have a sodding baby! Wrestling is often predictable for a very good reason. The industry is so patently ludicrous that paradoxically, it must be kept simple to make even a lick of sense. With that in mind, I'm Adam Wilborn from What Culture, and these are 10 times WWE booked the wrong guy to win. Number 10, Alberto Del Rio beats CM Punk and John Cena. The 2011 Summer of Punk was a thoroughly dispiriting experience, or as I like to put it, a load of bollocks. It promised and initially delivered so much. A 5-star classic at Money in the Bank with John Cena, arguably the most heated match of all time, was preceded by CM Punk's boundary-smashing pipe bomb promo in which he suggested that he'd wrest the WWE title away from the clutches of Vince McMahon. A head-scratchingly nonsensical storyline followed, which incorporated Triple H, Kevin Nash, and the long-forgotten Awesome Truth. Del Rio would pin designated jobber Punk in this triple threat Hell in a Cell encounter to somehow initiate their winter program, but the damage was done. By not allowing Cena to be pinned, even after copious chicanery, the message was clear. The doused Punk was firmly below Cena on the totem pole of the former Titan sports. The convoluted mess was avoidable too. A high-profile novel and lengthy series between John Cena and Rey Mysterio, whilst Punk, didn't return rather than just come back after 8 sodding days, left you with 2 heroic characters to whom the concept of surrender is absolutely alien and who would have adequately sustained the company's summer business. Number 9, Mark Henry beats RYBACK. This match, on the surface, seemed to serve one purpose: reinforce RYBACK's Herculean act by having him smash the elephantine Henry with his shell-shocked finisher, creating a sort of micro-level Hogan versus Andre Mania highlight reel moment in the process. Instead, though, WWE booked Henry, whose Hall of Pain persona had long since lost its luster, to go over RYBACK, whose impending heel role was therefore dead before it began. It was a typically frustrating example of the rote 50-50 booking philosophy. In protecting Henry, WWE were left with a challenger who had 0 momentum before engaging in what was already a fairly predictable series. It could be argued that RYBACK's loss served as motivation for his subsequent turn, but it hardly positioned him as the cracked mirror Cena doppelganger necessary to imbue their feud with must-see stakes. Number 8, Triple H beats Sheamus. This is a loss from which the Great White, aka me if I was a wrestler, has arguably never recovered. Triple H had yet to appoint himself in the jobber to future stars capacity, but a victory here was still, if not inconceivable, and just bloody pointless. He didn't need the win. Sheamus, struggling for acceptance and relevance, did. Triple H was booked to win the match, of course, which, whilst very good whilst it lasted, went just over 12 minutes on a bloated card. In an attempted equalizer, Sheamus was credited with putting Trips out of commission for a near year following the events of Extreme Rules a few weeks later, but the damage, ironically, had already been incurred by the Celtic Warrior. In losing on the big stage, he was cast as a B-show player, a man who propped up the boring post-Mania season while the real stars retreat into the background. Number 7, John Cena beats Brock Lesnar. Yes, alright, things kind of worked out in the end. Despite this loss, a WrestleMania loss to Triple H and a sobering UFC suspension, Lesnar's killer aura hasn't really been tarnished. Real blood-drawing elbow strikes, yeah, they'll see to that. But it took the sheen, not that one, off Lesnar's debut, the misery following which was compounded by his heat-free series with Triple H. To properly resuscitate the Lesnar character, WWE felt compelled to have him end The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak, a booking decision which could quite easily have made it onto this list. Moreover, it made 0 sense for Cena's 2012 trajectory either. 2012, by design, was meant to be the worst year of Cena's career. If it wasn't, he wouldn't need to redeem his loss at the hands of The Rock at WrestleMania 28, which, it should be pointed out, was barely decisive. He lost the match more than Rock won it. Cena in the Extreme Rules post-match did look, and indeed was, thoroughly battered, but that doesn't inform the record books. He won in former UFC champion Lesnar's first WWE match in 8 bloody years. Number 6, Triple H beats Goldberg et al. Oh god, this Goldberg experiment was deflating. Why did WWE even bother? The Elimination Chamber match seemed custom built for the marauding Goldberg character. Booking him to brutally cut through the field would have resembled his fabled WCW push in microcosm. But of course, insecure politic Triple H was hiding in the grass, laying in wait, ready to smash Goldberg with a solitary sledgehammer shot to steal the win. This was all designed to promote their subsequent singles match, but his unstoppable monster aura was stripped away the second he was stopped. It was so bungled that it hastened Goldberg's departure after just 1 year. Number 5, John Cena beats the Nexus. Oh, this one hits home. Best friend Stu Bennett, aka Wade Barrett, and all that. The manner of Cena's win was as egregious as the decision itself. Yes, by putting the Nexus over at SummerSlam, WWE wouldn't have made 8 main event guys at once. They would have, however, prolonged the faction's appeal and imbued the Wade Barrett versus Cena singles program with, reason and a raison d'etre. Oh, that's right. I speak French. When Cena and Barrett eventually clashed in the autumn and winter, the outcome was painfully obvious. Cena had already beaten Barrett and Justin Gabriel with the greatest of ease. Why would he struggle without the numbers disadvantage? Number 4, Jerry Lawler beats Jake Roberts. Jake Roberts' 1996 return was inglorious, as this tasteless feud and incredibly bad non-match with Jerry Lawler demonstrated. It was a natural conclusion to a uncomfortable story. A full year before Vince McMahon denounced the black and white ideal of good guys versus bad guys, you'd have expected WWF to upend Lawler's constant berating with a quick, feel-good win. Nope. Instead, Lawler, in keeping with the storyline in which he admonished Roberts for his real-life struggles with the Source, battered Roberts with a bottle of whiskey before pouring his contest all over him, en route to a mystifying and demoralizing win. It was an insult to a man whose mastery of both the face and heel role did so much to help WWF's national expansion. Number 3, Shawn Michaels beats Vader. Leon Vader White was doomed in the WWF from the start, despite his auspicious Gorilla Monsoon smashing introduction. Vince McMahon, who it must be remembered hired the man presumably on the strength of his work in WCW and New Japan, wished to do away with the Vader name and repackage him as the copyrightable Mastodon. Early indications weren't good, despite his eventual acquiescence. According to on-screen charge Jim Cornette, Vader then became the latest subject of Shawn Michaels' infamous backstage politing. Michaels cried foul at the stiffness with which Vader worked, which was his foremost appeal. Vader was a beastly kicker. That was his thing. Michaels consequently sabotaged the already half-hearted Vader push, maneuvering his way into a SummerSlam victory. Vader never recovered, and instead, Psycho Sid was transplanted into the role of the monster heel who'd temporarily unseat Michaels as WWF champion. Michaels not thrilled at that prospect either, apparently, admonishing him as the most expensive piece of luggage in WWF history. Michaels, therefore, by the way, directly responsible for the worst WrestleMania main event in Federation history. Number 2, Mabel beats Savio Vega. King Mabel is the reason many perceive 1995 as being the lowest ebb in WWE's celebrated history. Mabel wasn't Giant Gonzalez level garbage. He was deceptively mobile and projected a semblance of menace, but regardless, he was barely over and demonstrably incapable of sustaining audience interest, even over the span of 10 minutes. His SummerSlam 1995 main event with Diesel was somehow as equally atrocious as the previous year's dismal Taker versus Taker debacle. His push was also much too sudden. It was desperate and derivative. So closely was he being modelled on the fading Yokozuna. Bam Bam Bigelow was sat there doing barely anything following his awesome work at WrestleMania 11, bouncing around the mid-card with no consistency. A far superior big man, Bigelow should have challenged Diesel instead of squashing the irredeemably terrible Henry O'Godwin. Number 1, Fandango beats Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho should be admired for his willingness to lose to an array of up-and-coming talent. So many in his position as a vaunted veteran who'd done it all have been too reluctant to relinquish their status. An entire billionaire-funded wrestling company in WCW was dissolved in part because this culture was ingrained in its DNA. That said, Fandango was, even then, a one-note comedy character who, with all respect, didn't possess the superior in-ring game to transcend its limitations. Accordingly, this result did him no favours and only served to diminish Jericho's Starmaker appeal. If a creepy ballroom dancer could beat him, anybody could. His subsequent programs with CM Punk, Bray Wyatt et al. Were directly rendered painfully obvious as a result. WWE may have had grander plans for Fandango after the bout, but the post-Mania Raw Izod Center crowd in their drunken belligerence put pay to that. His subsequent desperate pseudo-face turn was received with pitiable apathy from an audience who despaired at WWE's try-hard transparency. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Let us know in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. Thanks for watching. I've been Adam from What Culture, and I'll see you soon.